welcome to Mark on Motoring. Today we're going to have a look at the Fiat 500 S TwinAir 105. Now first of all, apologies for the audio quality. The external microphone I bought worked perfectly well at home. As soon as I get out here and set up today, nothing. So I've spent the past half hour messing around trying to get it to work, but with no joy. So what we'll do is I'm going to take you off the tripod. We'll have a good look around the outside of the car, and I'll probably overdub that bit later on at home. Then we'll have a look inside the car. The Nuvo, or New 500 as it was known, was released in 1957, a whole 2 years before the Mini. It had a two-cylinder engine at the back of the car driving the rear wheels. The new cars, as we know them now, or does that make it Nouveau, have typically had four-cylinder engines, aside from the TwinAir, which harks back to the original with a two-cylinder engine. This being the S trim, not to be confused with the Sport that went before, has different bumpers, different wheels, these small side skirts, although not as tall as the Abarth ones, and a small boot spoiler at the back as well. Boot space isn't too bad in the 500 for a small car, and this one even has a space saver wheel. Just be warned, a lot of the newer Series 4 cars don't have that. That's the facelift models. With those, like many cars, you'll get a compressor instead of a spare. So access to the rear is pretty easy, just with this handle on the top. Slide the seat forward. Once inside, space isn't too bad. I've got room for my feet underneath the seat base in front. My knees are just sort of touching the back of the seat, but yeah, I've got a little bit of space. Shoulder room's not bad, there's a nice cut out in the side of the door here. Headroom, I'm just about touching the roof. I'm approximately 5'9", so maybe I wouldn't want to do the longest of journeys in here, but yeah, you can certainly fit an adult in the back here. It's a strict four-seater, so 2 seat belts in the back, 2 headrests, and a 50-50 split rear seat. And a couple of speakers in the sides back here, and we've got a few cup holders down here as well, although I wouldn't put anything too large in here. Probably designed for a soft drinks can, but in all honesty I certainly wouldn't want them in there on the move because they are very shallow and they're likely to just fall straight out. Now, not all 500Ss were created equally. Some of them had a 1.2 4-cylinder normally aspirated engine with about 69 horsepower and only 2 valves per cylinder. Then we got the 2 versions of the TwinAir engine. Now the TwinAirs are 2 cylinders, 875cc, 4 valves per cylinder, turbocharged. The most common one was the 85 horsepower, which came along first and actually won an Engine of the Year award at launch. A few years that one produced 85 horsepower, but a few years down the line, Fiat released this one, and not many people expect it because cost-wise you're probably not that far off entry-level Abarth money. The difference with this one is it produces 105 horsepower, produces the same amount of torque, 145 newton meters, at only 2,000 revs, so you've got loads of mid-range pull. In fact, for such a small engine, it doesn't really like to rev. Peak horsepower is 5,500, but by 6,000 it will feel boost dropping off and it doesn't want to rev out. This particular one has had its engine cover replaced. Normally these would be just black, but otherwise everything under here is standard. You've got your heat shield at the front for the turbo, coolant expansion and screen wash on this side, oil on the top, battery over here. So really not much to it. The other difference underneath here that you can't see is the transmission. The TwinAir 105, like the 1.4, has a 6-speed gearbox, and it's a bit more about that when we're out on the road. So we've got 185/55/15 tyres on this car, which was the standard wheel size. They were available with a 16-inch wheel as well, with a slightly wider tyre. This one has also got it's got the grey, the gunmetal finish on the wheels, which I rather like. The brake calipers on this are red, which was an option I think earlier on the earlier 500s fitted with a 1.4 engines, and on the 105s. The other option on these cars at new would have been front fog lamps, which this car doesn't have. Now going back to the brakes on this car, all TwinAirs get larger front discs than what you would get on a 1.2, and in the case of the 105 horsepower you actually get vented front discs as well. The other upgrade is at the back of the car, where most 500s including TwinAir 85s get drum brakes. This one actually gets disc brakes, which are the same size as the front brakes on a 1.2. So here we are on board. Yeah, quite comfortable actually, not bad seats. The dash layout in these, quite a simple design, just this long piece that runs across the dash. In this particular car we've got like a satin finish, but I actually preferred a lot of the earlier models which had a body coloured strip. I actually thought that was a really good feature of the car. But they are interchangeable, and depending how much you want to spend, you can get them wrapped, or you can buy carbon effect or even genuine carbon dash inserts, though those are quite expensive. So we've got 500 logo actually embedded into the dash here as well, which is a nice touch. As we move across to the centre, you've got your vents and a single DIN CD head unit. It does play MP3, and there is an additional port for plugging in a 3.5mm jack or a USB, but though it has Bluetooth and things, there are some compatibility issues, and people have struggled with streaming music from other devices. So you find a lot of owners will actually replace all this with a double DIN head unit, an aftermarket one. I'm not a huge fan myself, because it involves not only removing these vents, but behind you have to cut the ducts for the venting, and that's not really something I want to do. This particular car's also got the port on top for the TomTom sat-nav. There was a particular one that was actually developed for use in Fiats, and that just slots on top of the dash there, the cradle, so it can take power to charge the unit itself. So moving down below the head unit, we've got this button, which is probably my favourite one on there, which is a sport button. When we press the sport button, it actually not only does it make the engine, shall we say, a little more potent, but it also changes the instrument cluster. So we've got a few things on there, like the eco gauge turns into a boost gauge, and there's actually a G meter in the middle of the display, which obviously shows someone at Fiat had a sense of humour. Moving across, we've got this hazard warning light switch, which is actually quite a nice finish. Again, we've got these satin bezels around the edge, and the button itself on this one has actually got sort of a clear casing around it, which actually gives it sort of a bit more of a premium look, even though it is just plastic. Moving across, we've got our rear fog lamp switch. If you had front fog lamps, that would also be on there too. As we move down, the TwinAir versions of the S got this nice climate control system. It's not anything fancy, it's not a dual zone or anything, but still climate control nonetheless. So just set your temperature, click it in auto, and leave it to do its thing. Below there, left and right electric window switches, pretty self-explanatory. And then between there, we've got the gear lever mounted up nice and high in the middle of the car, which seems a bit odd at first, but you soon get used to it, and it actually falls really nicely to hand from the steering wheel. This particular car, as I mentioned already, benefits from a 6-speed gearbox as well. Not much below there. We've got a little storage cubby, a couple of tiny cup holders which are about big enough for a kind of soft drink, like the ones in the back. I have actually got a thermos cup which I can kind of wedge in there, but it's not a great fit. Beyond there, you have across to this steering wheel. These S versions have got the Abarth style flat bottom steering wheel, which is quite a nice touch. Horn push in the centre. Then we've got various controls on the steering wheel. No cruise control on this one. It was actually available on cars from a later date, which is something I would have quite liked to have had. I do actually sometimes miss that from larger vehicles that I've owned before. So audio buttons on the left, mute button, volume up and down, and voice activation, which is a system I can't really tell you a lot about because it's something I never use. I just find it easier to just push a button. Moving across to the right hand side, we've got up and down menu keys, telephone, and source button for the audio. That again, that's primarily to do with the Bluetooth telephone. The system can do text messaging, although when I change phones, I've not been able to get that to work again. I had all on just transferring my phone book over. Behind there, everything pretty simple. Headlights on the left, indicators on the left, windscreen wipers on the right, and a button on the end which changes the multifunction display in the centre of the binnacle. You've got everything you need and not really anything more in this car. As I say, you've got climate control, air conditioning, electric windows, but beyond that there's not really much else you need. Bags down by your knees, curtain airbags, side airbags, steering wheel, front passenger. So just one thing in addition to that, we've got switchgear on the door panel here. That's just for your electric windows, which are also heated. Again, going with this retro theme, we've got these door pulls inside, which are quite nice. Actually push those to lock. We've got a little orange marker to show they're locked, and pull to unlock, and again to open. Again, on this particular model they're satin chrome. If you had a lounge model, then they would be a much brighter, shinier chrome finish on those. But they really do add to the retro feel of the car. Other than that, yeah, we've got these soft padded door cards, which in these have got this blue material on, which matches with the trim on the seats. And I weren't keen at first, but it does go quite well with the exterior body colour of the car. As for the door cards themselves, it's all very hard, scratchy plastic. The thing is that this car, a lot of people do compare it to the Mini. The thing with the Mini is a more expensive car, and a lot of the interior materials are probably of a higher quality because you're paying for it. The one difference with the 500 is that when things do go wrong, the cost isn't anywhere near as much as what I've heard it can be in something like a Mini. Same story with the dash top, all hard, quite firm plastic, but even though there's no soft touch plastic anywhere, everything actually feels quite solid, much better than it was in Fiats of old. In fact, I was never really interested in Fiats of old until the Panda came along, which obviously this car is based around. And you could argue the Panda probably is a more practical car, makes more sense. It's a cheaper car, it's got 5 doors, more spacious, but the 500 does have a certain charm. Approximately 3.5 metres in length. The 500's pretty good around town. Wheelbase is only about 2.5 metres, or just over 2 metres, I think. The downside to this is obviously on bumpy road surfaces at first you do feel a little bit like you're pogoing, but it's something you soon get used to once you've had the car for a while. So steering generally I think is light enough. I know some people prefer on the 1.2 litre engines, there's actually it's in lieu of a sport button, there's a power steering button which makes which gives you city steering, which is even lighter. Personally I think that'd be far too light. I like a little bit more feel. So on urban roads, yeah, quite an easy car to drive as you would expect. Visibility is really good. You do sit quite high up in the 500. Even if you have an Abarth version, you sit really high up, which has actually brought the car into some criticism over the years. So Door mirrors are nice and large as well, so again, giving excellent visibility. So as I said before, this gearbox, with this gear lever being sort of right up by your knee, it's really close to the steering wheel, so that makes the car even easier to drive around town. Now we're on quite a poor road surface at the moment, and yeah, the ride's a little bit choppy, but in all honesty, because those tyres are not too oversized, they're only 15 inch and the profile's not too low, so the car actually rides reasonably well for such a small car. Prior to this, I had an Octavia VRS, and before that I had a Citroen DS3 with the THP 155 engine in it. Now that thing was quick, it pulled from about 1500 revs, it red line at 7000 RPM, really quick car. But the 17-inch wheels with low profile tyres just destroyed that car's ride and handling. On a road like this, the slightest little groove and tram lines would be gone. So we're nice and warmed up now, we're into sport mode, and we're about to come into a national speed limit. At the moment, 30 mph in 5th gear. It's going to drop down to 3rd gear as we're into the national speed limit. Quick mirror check. And away, and the car picks up really well there from 2,500, 3,000 revs, 4,000. Already at the national speed limit. So this is where this TwinAir 105 engine really comes into its own. Great string of bends here. And as I say, even though the suspension is basically is no different to other models in the range, but it still feels composed. It's not quite as go-kart like in the steering as say a Mark Parr cab, but it's pretty good, and what you lose there you do make up a little bit in refinement. The gear change is brilliant, and I've got some Abarth pedal covers on here which make toe and heeling really easy. But every time you come out of a bend, just a slight squeeze of the throttle from a couple of thousand revs and the car's away. Actually a really nice sweet spot around 4,000 revs where the induction back turns more to a rasp or something from the exhaust. Again, with a little bit of body roll, but it's not excessive, and if it was any firmer I think the ride really would suffer. Something the Abarth models, it's been criticised, the turning circle. On a Fiat the turning circle's excellent, on an Abarth the turning circle's really poor, even for against a larger car, and that's all a trade-off in how the cars are set up. Level crossing here, and yeah, fairly civilised. Now this gearbox, well, it's a bigger difference than the engine itself. See, something strange I couldn't get when I first got this car is that things that we take for granted now. That's not bad going. Actually gives the car a power to weight ratio of, I think it's 111 horsepower per tonne or thereabouts, and about 120 horsepower per litre, which is fairly impressive. In fact, when you look at the weight and the performance stats on this car, it's comparable to the hot hatches that we used to want back in the 90s, you know, the old XR2s and things. And it has like the original Clio 16 valve, and the Peugeot 205 GTI 1.9 actually ran the same size tyres as this car, which is strange in a world now where most hot hatches are running over 200 horsepower, and they've got huge wheels and tyres. But like I say, it's something of a confused car. It's got a small engine, it's got low emissions, but it's not an eco car. But you can forgive it all that when you come out on a day like today, on a road like this. Even after a rough day at work, it's one of those cars that you can climb in and it'll always put a smile on your face. I've had cars that have costed 2 and 3 times this much, which just haven't delivered the same level of smiles per mile as what this little car can. So to sum up, what would I dislike about this car? Well, driving position. Not only do you sit high, but for me, I have to sit closer than I might like with the seat back more upright, because on this version, later cars had a telescopic steering, this one doesn't. So that would be one of my bugbears on this car. What else would I maybe dislike? To be honest, it's a victim of its own success. Fiat 500s are everywhere now, and obviously it has built a bit of a stereotype as being a teenage girl's car, and probably for good reason, because let's face it, the majority of 500s are bought by young girls. But in the right specification, it's a car with universal appeal that anybody could enjoy owning. Which brings us on to the lights. The handling's pretty good, the steering's not bad. Build quality isn't actually that bad. Some people do complain about build issues, but quite often that's cars that are older that have had a lot of owners, and I know for a fact that not all owners look after these cars quite as they should. They don't service them. It's everybody's first car, and for that it does suffer. But get a good one, then you'll be happy. And even when people move on, when they decide they need a bigger car, people still speak quite highly of the 500s. But the thing with this particular one that really sets it for me, yeah, I like the styling, slightly sporty, maybe not to the degree of the Abarth. You have got majority are the 500S's, which look identical to this one, to the untrained eye. The majority are 1.2, or they've got the TwinAir 85, which is a good engine, it's a good car. But with the uprated brakes and the closer ratio gearbox, makes all the difference. Which is why I would always say to anyone, if you get the opportunity to buy a TwinAir 105, don't pass it up. You can get the same engine in lounge trim as well, if you want something more with a luxury feel rather than a sporty feel. Suspension setup and everything's the same, so the car's handled the same. Or you can get the cult version with the same engine, which was essentially a bit like a lounge with all the options ticked. You got a fabulous leather interior, for example, in the cult. Or another rare model, if you can get it, if you want something a bit like the S, but something a little bit different, the GQ model, which had a two-tone grey and black paint, and a black leather interior. Really nice looking car. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this review. So thank you for watching another one of my videos. There'll be hopefully more videos to come along soon, quite possibly one on the Megane, but I'm having issues sourcing some of the parts for that car at the moment. Plus I've managed to destroy my locking wheel nut key, which means I can't get the wheel off, so I can't do some of the jobs that I was hoping to do, which we're going to feature in the next video. So yeah, hopefully we'll resume that again sooner than later. In the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If there's anything I've maybe missed, any questions, drop something in the comments, and hopefully I can answer any queries you may have. If you've enjoyed the video, pop us a like on. That way I know that I'm not wasting my time doing this. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, that way you'll never miss another one of his videos. Thank you again for watching. Goodbye till next time.